Okay, recording has started. So, so if we remember in the last class yesterday, we were discussing about what we call as linearly separable data set. So what's that? So they are like, it's basically a data set like this, where you can see there are two class levels. Let's say in this case, blue and red. So we say that the data set is linearly separable if there exists at least one linear structure which divides the data set such that all the points of one class are on one side of it and all points of the other class lie on the other side of it, right? As like here, of course, it's a two-dimensional data set, and the linear structure is hence the linear structure in 2D in the 2D space is a line. So like this line is the linear structure. But if we go to 3D, then this will become a plane. If we go to 4D or 5D, etc., it will become a hyperplane and so on. But whatever it is, whatever the nature of the linear structure is, basically it will have to partition the data sets into two parts such that all the points belonging to one set or one side of the linear structure will be of one class, and all points on the other side of the linear structure will belong to the other class. Okay. So a data set is said to be linearly separable if at least one such linear structure exists. Okay. And then apart from that, we also considered some other like other kinds of data sets like inseparable data set or multi-layer separable data set or non-linear separable data set or almost linearly separable data sets. Okay. Now, in case of so we started off discussing about linearly separable data set. That is, suppose like you are given a data set and you are also told that it is linearly separable. That is to say, at least one such separating hyperplane or exists, right? So then your task is to find at least one such linear structure which can separate the two classes. Why do you want to find it? So that you can use it as a linear classifier. And what is a linear classifier? So this is basically the linear classifier. Like the B we have decided to ignore. I mean, not ignore, but with include within W transpose X. So basically, the linear classifier is defined in this way, where W is basically the equation of or W transpose X equal to 0 is the equation of that linear structure, right? So for that purpose, one algorithm which we already saw yesterday is the so-called perceptron algorithm. So given a linearly separable data set, the perceptron algorithm we saw, it's an iterative algorithm which will like make an initial estimate of the linear classifier, keep on updating it whenever we make a mistake in classifying the training points, and finally stop when we have, that is when it satisfies a particular criteria, which may be that all the examples are correctly classified or a fixed number of iterations are completed or W does not change much upon iterations. Now, if the dataset is linearly separable, then we are sure that if the perceptron algorithm is allowed to run for enough number of iterations, then finally it will definitely be able to find that hyperplane which perfectly separates the two classes. If the data set is not linearly separable, then of course it will not, there does not exist any such perfect like linear structure. So perceptron algorithm will not be able to find it. I mean, if it does not exist, then how will it be found? But then even in such cases, we can come close to some criteria, such as the number of points that are misclassified can be minimized. So if the perceptron algorithm is allowed to run for a long enough time, we may be able to find such a linear structure for which a reasonably large number of examples are correctly classified. Now, and we also saw some guarantees or some kind of intuition about why the perceptron algorithm works. That is, in response to one question yesterday, we actually saw like how or what is the benefit of updating the linear structure whenever we make a mistake. So the answer to that is, whenever we make a misclassification like this, we try to update the linear structure in such a way that that particular point there is a less chance that it is going to be misclassified. I mean, even after updating, it may still be misclassified, but at least it comes closer to correctly classifying it. However, whenever I try to update the classifier in order to correctly classify one data point, in that process, it may end up misclassifying other data points. Maybe the ones which we have we have been able to correctly classify with the earlier value of W, they may get misclassified now. So that is why it is necessary to keep on doing many rounds. I mean, not so here basically we are doing, this is saying, this line is suggesting that you do one pass over all the n data points that are provided to you. But that is not all, because that is like doing one pass will not serve your purpose, because in that process you would have misclassified. That is, whenever you are updating at any misclassification, in the like by doing that you may have ended up misclassifying some of the other points which you have earlier been able to correctly classify. So to prevent such a thing from happening, you have to do multiple passes over all the n data points one after another, and we have to stop only when any of these stopping criteria are satisfied. Okay, of course, this is like only the, like we are talking about only the training set. So as we know that like doing well on the training set is not enough, so that is, it risks overfitting. So of course, for that you need to like take all the necessary precautions, like doing the k-fold cross validation, etc., etc. So so we are not talking about that. So we are talking about only the training algorithm on the training set. And now let us come to another concept. So okay, so first of all, there exists some guarantee about how long like a particular perceptron algorithm will take on a particular data set to find the best, or I mean to find a separating hyperplane which can separate the two classes. So so how many iterations it's going to take? So for that purpose, there is the Bloch and Novikov theorem. The Bloch and Novikov theorem tells us that if the dataset is linearly separable with margin gamma, then the perceptron converges after these many number of updates, that is to say, these many corrections will have to be made. Now let us look at this. So it says r square by gamma square. What is r square? R square is defined as follows. It's basically has got to do with the L2 norm of the different feature vectors, right? So so what we already know, what is this thing. So this is the L2 norm of any vector. So so we know how to calculate the L2 norm of vectors. We studied that during ridge regression. And so basically it has got to do with the largest L2 norm of all the n points. So what does L2 norm basically mean? The like L2 norm of a particular vector mean the L2 norm of a vector, obviously it means the Euclidean distance of that point from what? Yes.
Origin, sir.
Yes, from the origin, right? It's basically, it's nothing but the like the magnitude of the vector which you would like something which you are familiar with calculating, say in physics, right? You know that like if you have a vector, then like the magnitude of the vector, you know how to calculate by taking the sum of squares of all its elements and taking the square root of it, right? That's what you call as the magnitude. That's what you knew as the magnitude of the vector. But that's also the L2 norm of the vector. And all of us know that the magnitude of a vector is basically nothing but the distance of a particular of that point from the origin, right? So so r is the maximum distance of all so n points are given to you, so which are all at different distances from the origin. So let r be the maximum distance of any point from the origin. So it's suggesting that the farther the points are from the origin, the further the points are from the origin, the longer it will, or the higher the number of updates you need to make. And the denominator is called gamma, which is the margin. So we'll now so this notion of margin is a very important one, and based on this margin, let me for a moment delay defining the margin, but let me come to the next question. So what perceptron does is, perceptron gives you any separating hyperplane which separates the two classes. But as we said yesterday, there can be multiple such hyperplanes which separates the two classes. Now, perceptron algorithm will give you any one of those hyperplane, but that may not be the best one. So we may want to find what is the best separating hyperplane between the two classes. And as soon as I say that, the question arises, what do I mean by best? That is, why do I say that a particular, that one hyperplane classifier is better than another? So to understand that, we have to understand the notion of the margin. So let us look at this diagram now. So let's again go back to our standard 2D dataset, which is x1 and x2. So let us consider two datasets like this. This is one dataset, and so as you can understand, the two classes are like the circles and crosses. Okay, so these are the two datasets. Now between the between these two datasets, which do you think intuitively, which do you think is easier to classify?
First, sir.
Why?
Because the two, I think A, or suppose it is A and suppose it is B. So these distance are, I think, high, or they are separated from, I think, long distance then, and these are closer to each other, I think, sir, in the second.
In the second place, they, like as you said, so like here like we can say that the two classes are like further apart from each other. In this case, the two classes are closer to each other. So fine, agreed point. That's I agreed to that sentence. But but then why will I say that this is easier to what has that got to do with this being easier to classify than that?
So in the first case, we can have many hyperplanes, but for the second, only some.
Okay, so basically you are saying that because there is a bigger gap between these two classes, a larger number of hyperplanes can be accommodated in between them. In this case, the gap is much smaller, and hence only a smaller number of hyperplanes can be accommodated between them, right? So now based on this notion, let us come to the definition of margin again. Of course we'll let's first look, let's first consider like one linear classifier. Okay, let's call this as C1. Okay, now so as you can see that these this is, let's call this as C circle, and let us call this one as C cross. Okay, now so you agree that both these like both of these classifiers C0 and Cx, these are both of them are linear structures, so I can use both of them as these linear structures, right? So I can define this as this C0 is basically, I can call it as W transpose 0 equal to X, and I can call it as W cross transpose X equal to 0. These are the equations of these two linear structures. Okay. So you definitely agree that these two indeed do separate the the different classes into two sides, right? So like here, as you can see here, all the circles are on one side, all the crosses are on one side. In this case, all the crosses are on this side, all the circles are on this side, right? Now consider a third line like this. So something like this. Let me call this as just W transpose X equal to 0. That is C, just C. W transpose X equal to 0. So this one also satisfies that same criteria. That is, all the circles are on one side, all the crosses are on one side. So now tell me, between his circle CX and C, which linear classifier do you want to use to separate the two classes?
C1, the third one.
Why?
So I think it leaves a margin between these two areas.
So
That we can also expect the testing data to be little different from the training data.
right.
It leaves a margin for the
Yeah,
testing data to
exactly.
be fallen that way.
Exactly. That's a very good answer. Yeah, that is what I was looking for. So thank you. So basically, the thing is, both of these classifiers, yes, they are able to separate the training points from one, from one class to another, but just about to do so. That is, this circle point lies almost on the C0 classifier. That is, if instead of being here, if it moved just a little bit on this side, then it would have got misclassified. And as you said, that when we come to the testing phase, it's possible that the circles belonging to the same class, like some of them might be here, right? And if that some crosses might be here, like this, it's possible. So, and if that happens, we can't even call them as outliers. They are very much inliers. But it's like these two classifiers will end up misclassifying them, right? So basically the problem with these two classifiers is that they do not leave much space. They do not leave much room for error or margin of error. Unlike this one, which actually does leave enough space for us for this that is for any kind of deviation from the behavior of the training sets, right? So that is why I would probably prefer this one rather than this one or this one. Okay. Now before coming into this one, let's focus on these two things once again. So as you can see that the first one is this one, like basically it just defines the maximum limit of the circle points. That is like it just about makes sure that all the circle points are correctly classified. On the one which we call as C cross, on the other hand, that makes sure that all the cross points are just about classified. Okay. So these two classifiers, or these two hyperplanes, we call as the marginal classifiers of their respective classes. Marginal classifiers. Now, why we call that? Well, that should be pretty straightforward, because in a sense, it's these two classifiers are drawing a margin of these two classes. It's like saying that this is the margin for the circle classes. Beyond this, the circle points do not exist. And here also we are saying that this is the margin for the cross classes. Beyond this, the cross classes do not, the cross points do not exist, right? Of course, what we are like, this statement is true only for the training set. In the testing or validation set, of course, this might be violated, but like if we focus only on the training set, that's what these two classifiers are basically saying. So we call these as marginal classifiers. And now if I want to now what I define the term which is margin of say circle. So now what is margin of like margin of a class with respect to any hyperplane, like any hyperplane, is basically the maximum distance, sorry, the minimum distance of any point in that class from that line. Minimum distance of any point in class circle from the line. Which line? Like any line, margin of circle with respect to any line. So whether I consider this line or this line or this line, they will have some margin. Now, like a marginal classifier is that is like I will call this line C circle as the marginal classifier of class circle if if its margin with respect to I mean if the margin of the circle class with respect to that line is equal to 0. Okay, so that is to say the minimum distance of any point in the circle class from that line is equal to 0. So we can see, yes, that is indeed the case, because this point, like its distance from this line is 0, we can say. Like these points, they also have some distance, but we are talking about the minimum distance, which is the distance of this point from the from C circle. So this distance is 0. So I will call this C circle as the marginal classifier of circle, because minimum distance is equal to 0. Okay, or this minimum distance we can call as the margin. So this because this point sorry, this line, its margin with respect to I mean the margin of the circle class with respect to this line is 0. So I call this line C circle as the marginal classifier of circle class. The same I can say about C cross also, because as we can see, the distance of these 2 points from the circle from this classifier is again both these distances are 0. So so like in this case also, it's the minimum distance of any point from cross class to this line are 0. That basically means the marginal classifier of marginal classifier of cross, because margin of cross with respect to the line is equal to 0, right? So that's why, so based on this definition, we call C0 and C circle and Cx as the marginal classifier, and we also note that their margins are 0. Now if I consider any other line, let's say C from it, then what is happening? Then we say that then of course its margin that is the margin of the circle class with respect to this line C has got to be this distance, right? I mean all the points have some distance from this C, but this one again is the closest one. So let me call this as say M circle. So this basically is this much is the margin of the circle class with respect to the line C, right? Similarly, again, if you consider the distance of all the cross points from this line, among them maybe this one has the least distance. I call it as MX. The other ones also have some distance from it, but this distance is the minimum. So this MX is the margin of the cross class with respect to the to C. Okay. So now what we can say is that the margin of the data set of the entire data set, which includes both the circle and the cross points, with respect to C is equal to M0 plus Mx. Now, similarly, if you now come to this data set, now whatever it's as you can, as the picture suggests, it's difficult to find any much or too many linear structures which separates the two, but yes, they do exist. Say for example, this line, this in this case, this is the C, like this is C is circle, this is Cx, and maybe something like this. I mean, sorry for the bad drawing, but like it's very difficult to draw this. But so like although I'm not able to draw this very convincingly, but you can understand that there will be some C, some other C, which is not a marginal classifier from C, not C circle and Cx, but it will still separate the two classes. But which like as someone already pointed out, the margin in this, I mean there is very less space between the two classes in this case, so drawing that C is difficult. Now, so by the way, one thing you should note here is that the marginal classifiers are defined. These are not unique. There are many like many lines which can act as marginal classifiers to this. Like for example, this is one marginal classifier for C0 class. I mean C circle class. This is another one. This is and then again this is another marginal classifier for the cross class. So the marginal classifiers are not unique. Similarly, in this case also, as you can see that these are two marginal classifiers which I have suggested. There can be other marginal classifiers also, probably less than this one, because in the, as someone already pointed out, here the gap is wider, here the gap is very narrow. So now, so if you consider any arbitrary linear separator or any arbitrary hyperplane which separates the two classes in this case and in this case, now by definition, both of them will have some margin. As I said, this is any random line separating the two classes. So and it has like the data set has a margin with respect to this line with C. So and that I have defined as M0 plus Mx. Now if I come to this data set, so I call this C as a line which separates the two classes. So again here also it will have some margin. So it will have some M0 plus Mx. Okay. Now so now as the figure, as you can understand from the figure itself, obviously the margin in this case is going to be much larger than the margin in this case, right? I mean now or that is to now this particular statement does not make much sense, because margin is defined with respect to one particular classifier. Now if I take this marginal classifier C naught, or sorry C circle, then its margin with respect to circle class is 0. Its distance or its margin with respect to cross class will be something else, like let us say this distance, right? So maybe this point is closest to so whatever is the distance of this cross point from C circle, that distance I will is the margin of the cross class. So the total margin of the data set with respect to C circle is basically this distance. Similarly, the total margin of this class this line with respect to the total data set is again maybe this distance, right? In this case, for the classifier C, the margin is this plus this, right? Now so of course now the margin of the data set will vary from one line to another. In this case, the way these have been drawn parallel to each other vertically and so on, it may seem that like all the three of them have equal margins with respect to the data set, but that does not mean that like any line will have equal distance I mean equal margin with for the data set. Like if you consider a slanting line like this, say the C, this also will have some margin. Like for example, this is like as I said, this is a marginal classifier for circle because it's this circle lies on it, so its distance from this line is 0. But if you consider the cross, so this is the margin with respect to cross, right? So this I call as let me call this distance as Sx. Okay, so the margin of this line then, so what will I call the margin of this line, or what is the margin of this line with respect to the whole data set? Yes, margin of a line with respect to sorry,
Sx only.
Sx, right? The like the margin of the data set with respect to this learning is with this line is nothing but the margin of circle class, which is 0, plus the margin of the cross class, which is Sx. So the margin in this case is Sx, right? In this for C, the like if I call this as say C1, then its margin is Sx. If I call this as C, then its margin is M0 plus Mx. Okay. Now in this, so like as you can see, understand quite clearly from the way this has been drawn, M0 plus Mx is definitely bigger than Sx. There can be no doubt about it. So so this line C, it's like it's creating a bigger margin in the data set than this line. Now, if you consider this dataset versus this dataset, it should be clear that there exists no line in this dataset, or I mean there exists no line which can create a margin which is as large as M0 plus Mx in this dataset. M0 plus Mx is this distance, right? This distance. Obviously, the way this data set is, there cannot be any classifier which has a margin of M0 plus Mx between these like with respect to this data set. So then what do we, so in such a situation we can say that the first data set, it has a larger, it has a bigger margin than the second data set. That is, even if you consider all possible lines, you will never be able to achieve a margin of M0 plus Mx in this data set, while in this data set, like you have already achieved with using this C as the line, you have achieved the margin of M0 plus Mx. There may exist some other line which has an even larger margin than that. Okay, so in that case I will say that this data set has a larger margin than this data set. I mean, irrespective of the line, like we can say that this data set has a larger margin than this data set, right? And hence we can say that this data set is easier to classify than this data set. Both are linearly separable, but this has a wider margin, or like larger or wider margin. Hence this is, we can say that this is, both are linearly separable, but it is in this case it is easier to find a linear classifier than this one. And not only is it easier to find, but we can actually expect, if like even in the like in the, even if here in this data set, even if we do manage to find a line like C which does separate the two classes, it's possible that this will no longer work in the testing phase. I mean, it will no longer give us high accuracy in the testing phase, because as someone already pointed out, it's possible that there can be some points like this, some points like this, etc., which are not outliers, but which will get misclassified with respect to C in this case. That is, the margin of error is really less. Whereas in this case, I can expect that if I am choosing, say, a line like C or even a line like C1 as my classifier, then even during the testing set, like I can expect reasonably good performance. Okay. So that is why I say that this data set has a larger margin. Now coming back to the to this theorem, the Novikov theorem in case of perceptron, what it is saying is that the number of updations needed is inversely proportional to the square of the of this margin, right? The square, like if the margin is gamma, then the perceptron converges after r square by gamma square updates. Now, so basically it means that larger is the margin, the less is the number of updates you need to make. For good reason also, as we said, that larger margin means it is easier to find separating hyperplane. Smaller margin means it's more difficult to find the hyperplane. So basically that is what is being said by this Bloch-Novikov theorem. Now the question, so now moving beyond perceptron, so if suppose you are given any data set like this, so so now let me so now we were earlier we were discussing in the last class and today also we are talking about how to find the best separating hyperplane, or the best separating linear structure which separates the two classes, right? So obviously, so now if you are, so now it should be clear what I mean by the best linear classifier. So can anyone now suggest what I mean by best linear classifier? Yes.
It has equal margins on either side.
It has equal margins on either side, true, and something more than that. Okay, fine. So what the point you made is a good point. So basically it's saying, let us consider two things. Okay, let's consider this one. So as you can see that this line which I am calling as C1 and this line which I am calling as C2, both of these, like this is a marginal classifier of cross class, C2 is a marginal classifier of circle class, as you can see. Now let me draw the line which lies exactly in between them, right? So let's call this as C3. So you will agree with me that C3 has equal margin from both the classes, right? Quite obviously, because that is the way I have designed it. I have drawn these two marginal classifiers. I have then drawn the line which is exactly in between the two parallel marginal classifiers. So obviously it has got to have the equal margin from both the classes. Fine. So, and what is that margin equal to? That margin is equal to this distance plus this distance, which is basically the distance between these two parallel lines. Now I consider two other marginal classifiers. Say this one, let's say. Let's call this as C4, and this one let me call as C5. You'll agree that both of these are also marginal classifiers. And now again I consider the line which is exactly halfway between these two and parallel to them. So I call this as C6. Okay. So just like C3, C6 also has equal margin with respect to both the data sets, right? So this is this much and this margin is this much. Fine. So now tell me, between C3 and C6, will you prefer both? Like if you have to build a classifier, then like will you prefer C3 and C6 equally, because both of them satisfy the criteria that their margin with respect to both classes are equal. But will you like are C3 and C6 equally desirable for classification?
No, sir. Seems like C6 has greater margins.
C6 has
Greater margins.
C6 has a greater margin. So does it mean that you will prefer C6 over C3?
Yes, sir.
Yes, right. So so as we have discussed earlier, having good margin is generally better for classification. Why? Because it can take care of the like it is more robust to the like to say some kind of noise, like in the test set if there some points lie here and there, etc. To reduce the risk of misclassification, I want to like I would prefer such a classifier which has a creates a greater margin. So as you can see, like as you yourself said, there are different classifiers are possible, but among them you will prefer that one which creates a larger margin with the data set. At the same time, another thing also, like you said earlier, that is their margin with respect to both classes should be equal. That's like a standard criteria of fairness. That is, you do not want to make more mistakes with respect to one class and less respect to mistakes with respect to another class. I mean, in some situations, of course, you may have some reasons for doing so. Say, for example, in the false positive, false negative case, they are like you may consider one the target class as more important. So you may think that even if I like commit some type 1 errors, I should not commit any type 2 errors or something like that. But as of now, this is like I'm not considering those kinds of situations. I'm saying just considering both the class levels as equally important to me. So I do not want to give preference, that is I do not want to give any more or less risk of misclassification on any of the classes. So I will create equal boundaries or equal margins for both classes. Additionally, I want the margin to be as large as possible. So basically I have two objectives now. One is maximum margin, and secondly equal margin with respect to both classes. Okay. Now let us so with that so basically that hyperplane classifier which satisfies these we can call as the best classifier or the optimal classifier. And now the what the perceptron algorithm gave me is any classifier, any arbitrary classifier which separates the two classes. It may be this, it may be this, it may be this, it may be this, or anything else also. I am not guaranteed that I will find the optimal classifier in the perceptron algorithm. So for that purpose, to find the optimal classifier which reduces the risk of errors on both classes, reduces a risk of error on both classes. So for this purpose, what I have to do, I will have to formulate. What I do is I come to the for like max margin formulation. Max margin formulation. So what is max margin formulation? Now, okay. So first of all, let us consider W transpose X equal to 0. This is the generic equation of any linear classifier. We know that. W transpose X equal to 0. This is like the standard equation of a linear structure. That is the in this case a linear classifier. Now let us let us come to this thing. Let us take a look at this figure. So so now suppose that you have two marginal classifiers or like two parallel marginal classifiers of the two classes. One of let's call one of them as W. One of them is I call it as W transpose X equal to 1. The other I call it as W transpose X equal to -1. So now see this let me call this as W transpose X is equal to 1, and I call this as W transpose X equal to -1. So like you can understand that both of these are like valid equations for that is linear structures, right? Just like we do in coordinate geometry. And now, of course, this also suggests something. It also suggests that there is a particular distance between these two, and so on, like with respect to the intercept, because one is like here it is equal to 1 and here it is equal to -1 and so on. So I'm not so in general I'm not claiming that you will always be able to find two these marginal classifiers which are of these two forms, but if not found, you can always change, I mean scale the feature vectors in such a way that you can find them. Now that is to say, like if the distance between these two are such that between these two classes are such that you cannot find a minimum marginal classifiers satisfying these two equations, with one having like something is equal to 1 and the other having something equal to -1, in that case you basically have to just scale the data points such that this happens. Now so obviously if this is if W transpose x equal to 1 is the equation of C4 and W transpose x equal to -1 is the equation for C5, then the equation of C6 will have to be W transpose x equal to 0, because C6 is defined to be the exact, that is to say C4 and C5, the way they are defined are obviously they are parallel to each other, because both of them are this W transpose x into something. The W is same in both cases, so they have to be parallel to each other. And then this C6 is defined to be exactly halfway between them, so I write W transpose x equal to 0 in this case. Okay, now so now what is note that I do not know W at this stage. I am just saying that this is the case for any generic lines like this, any generic margin these marginal classifiers can be called as can be expressed in this form. If it cannot be done, then you have to transform the data so that it can be done. And once you have the marginal classifiers like that, you can also get W transpose x equal to 0. Now, if W transpose x is equal to 0, if this line we are considering, then you can just understand what is going to be the total margin with respect to the cross and the circuit classes. So that is nothing but the distance is going to be nothing but the length of this line, and in this case it's for circles the margin is going to be the length of this line. And you can from the knowledge of coordinate geometry, you can understand that distance is going to be something like this, right? This distance is going to be 1 by the L2 norm of W, and this distance is also going to be 1 by the L2 norm of W. Right? This is like basic coordinate geometry, like so you all know how that is. Suppose there is a parallel line, there are two parallel lines like this, and what is the perpendicular distance between them? Like one of them is say y equal to mx plus c. Sorry, y is equal to mx plus c1, and this is equal to y equal to mx plus c2, right? So now you that is like if these are the two lines, then what is the Euclidean distance between them? So like these kinds of problems I'm sure you have studied when you are preparing for your JEE. So based on like applying some of the formula we learned at that time, we will be able to work out that in this case both of these distances are equal to 1 by the L2 norm of W, right? So what is the total margin? The total margin with respect to the line W transpose x equal to 0, this obviously has got to be 2 by this thing. So now what do I want to do? As I said already, I want to find that line for which this total margin is maximum. That's my definition of the best or the optimal classifier. So I want this to be maximum, as large as possible. Right? So basically what I need to do, I need to choose, that is the W which I want is equal to argmax, this thing, argmax over W, this thing. That argmax of W means that value of W which maximizes this thing. Now, this I can also write as in the same as follows. Instead of writing argmax of W, say I write it as argmin of W by taking its reciprocal. Right? If this is maximized, obviously this will be minimized, no doubt about it. And now I also do one more trick. I put a square here. Instead of just considering the L2 norm of W, I now consider the squared L2 norm of W, just as I had done in case of ridge regression. So do you remember in case of ridge regression why we had taken the square on this W while building the regularizer?
For calculation, sir.
Yes, for calculation, because I wanted to do the differentiation of this thing with respect to W, and that differentiation was easier if we had a square here. So in this case also, precisely for that same reason, I will again put a square on this. Okay. So basically I want to find that W for which this thing will have to be minimized. Right? Now, is that all? Is it fine if if I if I choose that W which minimizes this thing? So if so obviously, as you can understand, if I go for W is equal to 0, I mean the 0 vector, then obviously this will become 0 and there cannot be anything less than that, right? So does it mean that I will just say that W is equal to the 0 vector and just end it at that? What will happen if I do that? What will happen if I say that W is the 0 vector that which gives the minimum margin? So I will go for the 0 vector. So what will happen if I do that?
Sir,
Yes,
W into X, I think will be 0 for that, I think, sir.
No, like tell me. So see, my final goal is to do the classification, right? The final goal is to do classification. I mean, whether it's a maximum margin or minimum margin or whatever or any other margin like that, that's a secondary question. But first of all, I have to classify the points correctly. Now, if I take up just W equal to as the 0 vector, so W equal to the 0 vector basically means it's just the origin, nothing else. It just means that is it's just like the origin vector. So what does that mean? If we are taking that, then we are it's not that we are doing the classification meaningfully. That is, we are not in that is to say, what will my classifier be in that case? My classifier is going to be, what is my classifier? My classifier after all is this one, sine of W transpose X, right? Now, if W is the 0 vector, then as someone said, then in that case W transpose X for any point is going to always be 0, and I'm going to take sine of 0. I have defined sine function such that sine of X is equal to 1 if X is greater than equal to 0 and is equal to minus 1 if X is less than 0, right? So according to this, since for all points the sign is going to be 0, so y will always be equal to 1 according to this. That means all the points are going to be classified in class 1, which obviously is not the case. So it is not enough for me to only minimize the this thing or to maximize the margin. There I also have to ensure that all the points are correctly classified. So in other words, this is an optimization problem. That is, I am trying to optimize this function called L2 norm of W, but I cannot do it in a in an unconstrained way. I also have some constraint. What is the constraint? The constraint is that I have to classify all the points correctly. So instead of having a what they call as an unconstrained optimization, this is an unconstrained optimization. So this like this will not do for me. So what I have to do, I have to go for constrained optimization. What is the constraint in this case? The constraint is that all the points have to be correctly classified. Okay. So so basically, so like what we are trying to do is as follows. I want that W which is argmin of W, I mean argmin over W for this quantity, let's say half, such that all the points are correctly classified. Now all the points are correctly classified. This like I have to write in mathematical notation. So if you remember something we had discussed in the last class, that is, if this happens, that is if I consider this product, right? So yesterday, like we were discussing that if yeah, so if this is positive, then what does it mean? It basically means that either it means both of these are positive, both y, that I mean both y is positive and W transpose X is positive, or it means that both of these are negative. That is, y is negative, W transpose X is also negative, right? So that means what? That means the sign, I mean the predicted value of y and the true value of y, they agree if this is positive. But if this is negative, that means one of them is positive, the other one is negative. Whichever is positive, whichever one does not matter, but it basically means that y and W transpose X do not have the same symbol. But what is W transpose? But what is my predicted level y? That is nothing but the sign of W transpose X. So if W transpose X and Y have different signs, that is, let us say W transpose X is positive. In that case, Y hat is going to be +1, but Y is negative, that is -1. So that means what? That means Y and Y hat in this case are not matching. So Y and the predicted value of Y and that which is Y hat and the true value of Y will be equal only if this condition is satisfied, right? If and only if this condition is satisfied. So when this like a particular data point satisfying that this criteria means that this point is means what? That means this point is correctly classified. So I write that such that yi times W transpose Xi is greater than equal to 0 for all I. Okay. Correct? Yeah. So this basically means all points correctly classified. So in the language of optimization, I say that this is my objective function and these are my constraints. And the two things totally taken together is called constrained optimization. Okay. Fine. So now we have to solve this constraint optimization problem through certain like numerical techniques. Okay. So before we go into that, we take a 5-minute break.
Sir,
Yes.
for this boundary that we predict from this constraint optimization, it will be highly like dependent on the outliers, right?
So as
Because
of now,
if there is a boundary.
yeah, right. So as of now, we have assumed that the data set is is linearly separable. That is to say, there are no outliers. Now, of course, that's an idealized situation, and so we will soon generalize this to accommodate the outliers. But as of now, for the original treatment, just assume that there are no outliers.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, as you said, there are a lot of cases. I mean, a lot of linear separable hyperplanes are possible. So, uh, sir, how we get all those possible hyperplanes in one go and
No, we do
differentiate?
not. No, we do not we do not get all of them in one go. It's like we as of now I have not got any any hyperplane at all. As of now, that is to say, I do not know any value of W as yet. I am only trying to formulate an equation to find them. Now in that equation, what I am trying bringing in are the conditions which I want to be satisfied. There are basically two conditions which I want to be satisfied. One is that I want the margin to be maximized, which is ensured here, and I also want the all the points to be correctly classified, which is which is encoded by this formula. Now so far I have not that is, as you said, now this W can take any value. What I am trying to do is I am trying to build a mathematical equation or I mean I'm trying to formulate an optimization problem which by solving which I can get the optimal W, not any other W.
Sir, but at the initial stage, what are the W's that we're gonna choose?
No, like if you so like in case of perceptron algorithm, which is based on initial which is an iterative algorithm, in that case you can choose any W and just go on. In this case, this algorithm works differently. As of now, we are not required to choose any initial W at this stage. So this approach which we are taking now is more like the your ridge regression or linear regression. So in case of ridge regression or linear regression, what happened there? You got a concrete definition of the W which you want. Say something like W is equal to, that is, you just got that this kind of something like this will exist, right? X transpose Y, something like that. So there is nothing, I mean there are also multiple W's were possible, but you were told that this is the optimal W which will minimize all the errors. So this we got from some formula by calculate, but that is through some calculations we got that this is the optimal value of W. There is no initial value of W to be chosen here. Similarly in this case also. Okay, before we resume the lectures, let me make a couple of announcements. So tomorrow we have the classes, the lab as usual, in which you will be there will be assignments given on the topics of these what we studied in the last class, that is related to this overfitting, bagging, boosting, etc. So the TS will take some classes as usual. Whatever we are covering today, if it does not, if we are unable to wrap it up today, then again tomorrow I may take 1 hour additional lecture to cover up this topic, and next Wednesday, the following Wednesday, which is 6th October, during the lab hours, we will again have our second test, which is which will be basically up till this point. So on 6th October, say 3 to 4 p.m. lab, we will have the second class test. And for the second class test, the syllabus will be up till this, like whatever we will cover today or tomorrow. That is, if we finish today, then till today. If we continue tomorrow, then till tomorrow. So basically, whatever we syllabus till.
From starting, like what came in the last test will also come.
No, it will not be there. Basically, that is in the first test we had up to decision trees, right? So say from so linear regression onwards, like linear regression till this max margin classification.
And sir, same pattern, like 3 questions. Will it be like last time?
Yeah, maybe 2 questions.
Okay.
From regression till this max margin classification. And another announcement is that from next week onwards, your lectures will be taken by Professor Ziaul Haq Paik. Okay, now let us resume. So this is the constant optimization problem which we were forming. So this basically is our objective function, which like what it is saying that basically the margins should be maximum. And this is saying that all points correctly classified. Now, I want to make a certain modification to this one. I have decided that I am not only satisfied by correctly classifying all the points with respect to this line. I also want all the points to be correctly classified with respect to the marginal classifiers. That is to say, it is not that is, I do not want any points like this to exist. So these points, as you can see, they will still be correctly classified with respect to this line, which is given by W transpose X equal to 0, but they will not be correctly classified with the respective marginal classifier. Correct? So as a result, what we have to do? We have to make sure that even the maximum margin classifiers to correctly classify it. Now, so the maximum margin classifiers are of course this one. So basically for these points, what has to happen is that Y times W transpose X plus 1 should be greater than 0. In this case, Y, like there is Y times W transpose X minus 1 should be greater than equal to 0. Correct? Now, but in one case, Y is equal to what? Y is equal to minus 1. And in these cases, Y is equal to plus 1. Why? Because that is how I have defined my Y's. I would which Y to call as minus 1, which Y to call as plus 1, that is up to me. So basically, like if I write this, so that basically means in this case, that is like if Y is equal to minus 1, then this becomes minus W transpose X minus 1 is greater than 0, or W transpose X is less than minus 1. In this case, as you can see, this condition basically implies W transpose X is greater than 1, right? So these two conditions together, that is these conditions and these conditions, I will express jointly. I will express them by saying that this product is going to be should always be greater than 1. That is, whenever Yi is positive, then if Yi is plus 1, then this condition simply means W transpose Xi is greater than equal to 1, which is this. And if Yi is equal to minus 1, then that means W transpose Xi is less than equal to minus 1, which is this. Okay, so both of these criteria are individually taken care of by writing it in this way. So instead of having this as greater than 0, I am having it as greater than 1. So this is all points are correctly classified with respect to their marginal classifiers. Now, so now what we have to do is we have to solve this constraint optimization problem. So now for any constraint optimization problem, this is the standard procedure. Say we have the problem looks like this. Meaning there is a function fx which we call as the objective function. I want to minimize it such that gx is less than equal to 0. This is the standard form of a like a constraint optimization problem. If whenever I am trying to solve the constraint optimization problem, the first thing I have to do is to bring this to the standard form. So as you can see, this is not in the standard form, but I can bring it to and there can be many such functions, constraint functions like this. That is, this I can have basically gi where I may be equal to 1, 2, whatever equal to. So as you can understand here, for every single data point, I have this as a as a constant, but there are n data points in the training set. For each one of them, I will have one equations like, I mean inequality like this. Okay, just like in this case, but the inequality, this inequality is not exactly equal to this inequality. This is like saying that some function of x is less than equal to 0. Here I am saying some function of x is greater than equal to 1. So first of all, let me adjust this to bring it to the standard form, which should be an easy task. It's like saying that 1 minus yi w transpose xi is less than equal to 0. Now it's in standard form. Now what happens is as follows. Now we define what is known as the hx is equal to fx plus lambda I gix. Right, lambda I gix. This is hx. So this hx, so as you can see, this takes into account both fx, the original objective functions, plus all the constraints for which I am calling as gix. Additionally, we have introduced these new parameters lambda I. These I call as the Lagrange multipliers. Okay, and this hx, this I call as my augmented objective function. So what does this mean? This basically means that this augmented objective function makes sure that your fx, that is the original objective function, plus all the constants, all of them are to be minimized together. That is, like, you are trying to find such a value of x which tries to minimize x. It also tries to minimize like the sum of all these things. That is, it's like it tries to make all of these as low as possible, which, and if succeeds, then it will automatically mean that these gix are always negative. Now, no, of course, like as you can understand here, when we are looking for, that is, these were all constraints which I originally wanted, but here all these constraints have been merged with each other as well as with fx. So all, like, it's possible. So when I am trying to minimize the sum of all these things, so I am not guaranteeing that all of these gixs will be individually minimized. I may not be able to find any x which simultaneously minimizes all of them. So that means I may have to make some I mean to say I may have to make some adjustments or some compromises with some of the constraints, but I will try to strike a balance between all of these. At least there some will be minimized, so that even if a small number of them are small number of constraints are actually violated, still we can ensure that at least most of the constraints are going to be satisfied. Also, to ensure that these constraints are given enough priority in the summation, then for that purpose we have the Lagrange multipliers also. So now you can see a direct analogy between this and say the regularized regression or the lasso regression or ridge regression which we had studied. So in that case, we had the OLR as the original objective function, or which we called as the empirical loss, and this GIX, that is the regularizer function, which we as the structural loss. Right? So basically, we or maybe the other way, we can call these the fx we can call as the regular as the structural loss, and this GIX, like this part, we can call as the OLR or the empirical loss. Either way, you can have it. And the parameter lambda parameter which we had in the in that ridge regression or lasso is analogous to these Lagrangian multipliers. Okay. So in this case, but note that I do not, in that case, in the case of ridge regression, the value of lambda was an user tunable parameter. I was free to choose what value of lambda I will put. But these Lagrangian multipliers, these are not in my hands. I do not choose their values. They are chosen by the optimization algorithm. Their values are found out by the optimization algorithm. How? With the help of gradients. That is to say, what I will now do is that I will calculate the derivatives. So x is an unknown. With respect to that, I take the derivative of the augmented objective function, right? But all the lambda i's are also unknown, the Lagrangian multipliers. Here basically I have the x is unknown and the individual lambdas are also unknown. So I basically I have to, whenever there are unknowns, I have to take derivatives with respect to them. So I take derivative with respect to x, I take derivative with respect to all the lambdas one by one, and I equate all of them to 0. Okay. And now what happens? So basically, like if they are like I get as many equations like this as the number of unknowns. I mean, x is one unknown for which for that I have got this equation. Like then if there are n number of equations like this, for each one of them I have a lambda I. I mean, if there are n inequalities like this, for each of them I have one lambda I, and I take the derivative with respect to all the lambdas. So basically, as many as many variables were there, I have their derivatives with respect to all of them. Correct? So now what happens? So now I get a set of simultaneous equations which I will try to solve. If I am able to solve, well and good. In that case, I will actually be able to get get some value of x, just like some value I had got in this case. I mean, do not confuse this x and this x. This is like, just I am talking about some plain simple theory. So x is basically the variable which I am looking for. So in this case, w is the x. So if I am able to set, if these functions hx, the functions fx, gx, if the functions are such that solving these equations gives me like closed form solution of x, then fine, I am done. If not, then I have to go for some kind of numerical methods like gradient descents. So basically, you have to solve this either analytically or numerically. So this is basically the standard framework of constraint optimization, and that is what we are going to apply in this case. So now let us see what happens if when we apply the concept of this constraint optimization for this particular problem.
Hello, sir. Would you please repeat how we get the g of x?
G of x are the basically the constraints that are given to you. The constraint optimization problem is that is minimize fx such that gix is less than equal to 0 for I equal to 1 to n, let us say. This is the constant optimization problem. So fx is given to you, gi is also given to you. You do not get it. Now, in this case, what is the problem? In our case, the problem is, as we discussed earlier, minimize the or maximize. So this is basically, this is saying maximize the margin such that yi w transpose xi is greater than equal to 1 for all I, right? Now this basically,
Sir, it can also be -1, right, for the other class?
no, that is that so that is taken care of by yi. So yi can be either +1 or yi can be -1. Now as we are showing in the last class, like if yi is in the case yi is equal to +1, for that what happens? For that what I want to happen is that w transpose x for them for such points, the for those points which are in +1 class, for them the marginal classifier is this one, right? For so what do I want for such points? I want for such points, what I want is w transpose x should be greater than equal to 1. This is the marginal classifier. So if these points are correctly classified with respect to the marginal classifier, that means what? That means this has to be satisfied. Otherwise they will be misclassified. But for the points for which yi is equal to -1, for them what's the marginal classifier? That is w transpose x is equal to -1. Now so for these points to be correctly classified, what I want is w transpose xi has to be less than equal to -1, right? This will for such points, for yi equal to -1 points, this has to be satisfied for correct classification. So either, so now be it +1 or be it -1, if I say this criteria w transpose xi is greater than equal to 1, you will see that both of these are taken care of. If yi is equal to 1, then this is satisfied. If yi is equal to -1, then this is satisfied, right? You put the value of +1 here, of course this is what you get directly. You put -1 here, you will get this one, right?
Sir, why did we change our constraint from greater than 0 to greater than or equal to 1?
That is because, like when I said the constraints are greater than equal to 0, that means what? That means I am saying that with respect to the line w transpose x equal to 0, all the points are correctly classified. That's what I meant, right? But I am not satisfied with that. What I am trying to say is that the points should be correctly classified with respect to the marginal classifiers also. So one is correct classification with respect to this point, with this line. The other thing is that that is fine. I want that to happen. That is what is indicated by yi into w transpose x greater than 0, greater than equal to 0. But I also want them to be correctly classified with respect to their marginal classifiers. That is, and what are the marginal classifiers? They are w transpose x equal to 1 and w transpose x equal to -1. So all the -1 points should lie on one side of w transpose x equal to -1, and all the +1 points should lie on the other side of w transpose x equal to +1. So that is why I changed my classifier. So so basically I want an even more robust classification. That is this was the situation, right? The points are like this. This is my marginal classifier of one marginal classifier. This is the other marginal classifier, and this is the optimal classifier. This condition means you have satisfied all the points with respect to this the optimal classifier, which is whose equation is this one. But that does not mean that you have satisfied them with respect to the marginal classifier also. For example, if you consider this point cross or this point circle, they are correctly classified with respect to W transpose X equal to 0, but they are not correctly classified with respect to these things. Okay, so I do not want that to happen. I do not want such points to exist. To ensure that, I must choose W in such a way that even these they are all are correctly classified with respect to this the marginal classifiers also. So that is why I moved from 0 to 1. Now, so having
Sir?
yes.
Sir, how do we marginal classifiers are parallel to each other, because we may not have two points on both the classes that are parallel to each other. For example, if you get what I'm saying.
No, no, that that is whatever. However, the points are located, it will always be possible to find some planes which are parallel to each other. Like you can all some marginal classifiers you can always find like this, no matter how the points are. Say for example, even if the points are say like this, if it is a linear, if like we can say that if they are linearly separable, that is a line exists like this, another line exists like this, whichever orientation it is, you will always be able to draw two lines which are parallel to each other, which are basically marginal classifiers. Now, with what orientation that is, that's a different matter. I am not saying anything. That is, the orientation is decided by W, but two parallel lines you will always be able to find.
Sir, also we won't always get -1 to 1 range, right?
So
For
so
the
that is what
margin.
I said. That is what I said. Like if not, then you have to scale the point so that you get it. You can just do some kind of normalization or or translation, whatever, so that you get it. Now let us so now we have formulated the objective function like this. So now let us go to the way in which we solve the constraint optimization problem. So what is that? So we define the augmented object or loss function, which is in terms of W, where we basically add this thing square plus, as I said, you introduce there are n data points, so there are n constant like that. So as we said that we have to bring it to the standard form, which is like saying 1 minus yi W transpose xi is less than equal to 0. This is the standard form. So I will bring this here. So basically this is my what I call as my GI of W. Right? GI of W. And what we have, we multiply it with the Lagrange multiplier, which I call as lambda I times 1 minus yi W transpose xi. Fine. This is the augmented objective function. Now what do we do? Now we take the derivative. We take the derivative of W equal to 0, and we also take the derivative. So W is an unknown, so I take a derivative with respect to that. All the Lagrangian multipliers are unknown, so I take derivatives with respect to them also. Now when I take a derivative with respect to W, so first of all I have to take a derivative with respect to this thing, the L2 norm of W. So what is L2 norm of W? We know L2 norm of L2 norm of W square is nothing but W transpose W. Now if I take derivative of W transpose W with respect to W, this is nothing but taking the this is so simple that you can actually just do the calculation yourself. That is W it will turn out to be just twice W. This is just like doing the normal differentiation, like just as you can just almost assume that it is like doing dw square with respect to dw, which is of course equal to 2w, right? So that is, so the only difference is that this is a square, this is a scalar w, this is a vector w. So if you take the take this differentiation, you will get twice w, but twice and the 2 here and the half will cancel out, so you'll get w, just w, the vector. Now what happens here, if I take the derivative of this term with respect to w, as you can see that w is like the first part 1 minus 1, this does not contain w, but this does. So basically you can just convince yourself that it becomes something like this, that this note that this w is linear, this w was quadratic, so you got a w after differentiation, but this w is linear, so if you differentiate, this w will just go away. So what you get is just lambda I yi xi, right? This is this and this is to be equated to 0, so you get an equation like this, correct? The problem here is that I do not know lambda I. I know yi. This is present in my data set. I know xi, the feature vector. This is also present in my data set. I only don't know lambda I. So had I known lambda I would have been able to get w. But because I do not know lambda I, so let me look at the other equations which I have in the system. So I differentiate this whole thing now with respect to lambda I. So what do I get when I differentiate with respect to lambda I? So clearly this part does not contain lambda I. Now, if I focus on this one, now there are n terms in this summation. One of them has lambda 1, the second has lambda 2, the third has lambda 3, and so on. But when I say lambda I am focusing, I of course can take only one value. I can be 1 or I can be 2, etc. So whatever it I is, there is exactly one term for which this is satisfied, right? So what, and I am taking the derivative with respect to that term. That means what, if I take the derivative with respect to that term, then what I get, I just get 1 minus yi w transpose xi is equal to 0, right? That's what I get when I like all the terms which do not contain lambda I, they of course will become 0. The only term which is like this, lambda I 1 minus yi w transpose xi, there is only one term like this, say lambda. So if lambda is equal to 1, then this one or something like that. So I get a term like this. So so basically I get another equation in w. So now what, so okay, so like we have come to this situation. Now what do we do? Now using what we have got so far, what we do is as follows. We try to just eliminate w from this equation. What is meant by eliminating w from this equation? Wherever you have w, you just replace w by this quantity, right? That is, I have expressed w in like I have expressed w in terms of this thing. So by the way, I got this term, but this does not like this has w, but it does not have lambda I. So but what I to solve w, what I have got an expression of w which involves lambda I, but here I am not getting lambda I here. So basically these terms are not helping me much at this point to solve this equation. So I have to take a different recourse. What's that? I now replace all the w's by this equation, by this thing. Wherever I find w, I replace it. So like for example, if I am like if I see this kind of a thing, L2 norm square of w, I simply write it as no, what is the L2 norm of w? That is of course w transpose w. So what I do is I simply write it as I equal to 1 through n lambda I yi xi whole transpose I equal to 1 through n lambda I yi xi. Correct? This is what you get. Now, so make sure that these vectors are consistent with each other. That is what. That is. This is the this thing is a d-dimensional vector. Similarly, the w is also, that is, w is has basically the same dimensionality as x, because that's why we are able to take dot product between w and x. So here, whatever is the dimensionality of w, that's the same dimensionality of x. So that these things are consistent. Now, how do I express this? So like this is clearly a linear combination of several vectors multiplied by it, like take or dot producted with itself. It's almost like saying that you have vectors a1 plus a2 plus a3 etc. dot or transpose a1 plus a2 plus a3, right? So if I write it in this way and then like just try to expand, as you can understand easily, there will be terms like this, quadratic terms like this, a1 transpose a1 plus a2 transpose a2 plus a3 transpose a3, and there will also be these cross terms, right? Like a1 transpose a2, a2 transpose a1, a3 transpose a1, a1 transpose a3, etc., etc. So it's just like doing a plus b plus c whole square. So in this case also we will do the same thing, and the whole thing, the expression which we will get, I can write it as double summation. Let us say I equal to 1 through n, j equal to 1 through n, lambda I, lambda j, yi, yj, xi transpose xj. Okay, like a rather complicated looking thing like this, but it looks complicated, but it's actually quite straightforward. It just follows from the principle of a plus b plus c whole square. You can like I leave it for an exercise for you to convince yourself like that. So but whatever it is, whenever I see any w in this equation, I simply replace it by this expression for w. That is, w is equal to summation over all i's lambda I x yi xi. Okay, I put it here. Then what happens? Then basically w is eliminated from the system, and I basically get a system, like I get an a function which contains only the lambda i's. So like what is written as alpha I in these slides, we are writing that as lambda I. Okay. So we get this kind of a function which is just a function of the lambdas. I mean, there are n of them, but it only those lambdas are there. And apart from that, there are the yi's which you have got from the data set, and you have the xi's which also have got from the data set. And additionally, there are some constraints like this. Where are these constraints coming from? The constraints are coming from here. If you just like change the that is here, if you just replace w with this thing, you will see like you will basically get these kinds of constraints. Okay? You will get something like this. Now where does that bring us? That this basically is what is known as a quadratic program. So I will not tell. So it's, as you can see, that like it's a object. It's a function. It's a quadratic function in terms of these variables alpha, which we are writing as lambda. So we call this as a quadratic program and a constant quadratic program. I will not tell you how to solve this. Let us just assume that there are some algorithms called quadratic programming to solve this. There are standard toolboxes for solving them. Ultimately, what will happen is that you will get the values of the lambdas. So finally, that is what happens is that we solve QP, which is a quadratic function, and get lambda. all the values of the lambda we get, right? So now once we get the value of lambda, then we can just plug those values to here, and we can then get the value of w. So like whatever, so like what is w? Then basically w becomes a linear combination of all the xi's. So yi is the class level which you anyway know from the data set. Lambda i's you are getting by solving the quadratic program. So they will be just some scalar, some numbers. So and yi is just +1 or -1. So basically you are multiplying each of the training data points with a particular constant, like a scalar term, adding them up and getting w. Okay, so this is the final expression for w which you get, which is nothing but a linear combination for of all the data points. Okay.
Sir, here n is the length of the data set, right?
N is the number of points in the data set. So like that is to say w, x both are d-dimensional real vectors and n data points. So what happens finally? Finally what you get is w is equal to I equal to 1 through n lambda I yi xi.
Then sir, lambda is also a d-dimensional vector, right?
No. Lambda is a scalar. Lambda is a real number. The lambdas are basically the Lagrangian multipliers. So how are the Lagrangian multipliers used? If you go back to the program like this, right? Assume this alpha is your lambda. So as you can see, what is this? This is a scalar. The L2 norm of W is basically W transpose W. It's the inner product of a dot product of W with itself. A dot product is definitely a scalar. So this is a scalar. So this whole thing will also have to be a scalar. There is no other way. You can, one is of course a scalar. Yi is a scalar. W dot xi, this is a scalar, right? So this whole thing is a scalar. The result is that the entire thing is a scalar. So this alpha or lambda will also have to be a scalar.
Sir, for every input value, we are finding a lambda, right?
Yes. For
so
every,
if our data set scales up to a very large, then number of equations to solve will be higher, right?
it will be, yes, it will be very high, but right, definitely if you have too many data points, then you will have too many equations, but you don't have to worry about that, because like let us assume that part we are giving off to our quadratic program, and we assume that the quadratic program is able to handle that large number of constants. Like here we just use that quadratic it's not, of course it will also have its own limits and so on, but with respect to this algorithm, let's just assume that it's a black box. So if there are lots of equations, true, there will be lots of equations, but your QP will handle it for you.
Sir,
Yes.
to validate our model, so with the testing data set, we just multiply with W and we check whether greater than or equal to 1 or minus.
Yes.
Okay.
So W we have got. So like you get your W from the training set. Now comes the validation or the testing. Let's come to the testing phase. So what happens? A new data point comes, X test. What do I do? I simply predict Y test is equal to, as you said, sine of, write it properly, sorry, is equal to sine of W transpose X test. What is this W? This W is nothing but what you got from here, so that you get Y test. Now what you just need to compare Y test, there will be a loss function which compares your Y test with the actual, this is your Y cap test, meaning the predicted value of Y, and this is the true value of Y. So you just and accordingly you decide, check whether they are matching or not. So this is like once you have got W, then you get the this thing. Now it is like it has been like it can be mathematically established, which we will not go into this class. These lambdas, so most of these lambdas will be equal to 0. Most will be 0. That is to say, when we are considering the linear combination of all the training data points, most of their coefficients are going to be 0. That is to say, W will not be based on those particular data points at all, right? Because their coefficients are 0, they are not playing any role in W. Only a small number of them will be non-zero. Which one of them? The ones which are closest to the marginal classifiers, they are the ones which will not be 0. See, if we consider this, suppose that is when we solve for W, let's say that this is this is the W which we get. Sorry. And I get this. So this line is my W transpose X equal to 0. This is the optimal classifier which I have got by solving this. This is the W. Now, so clearly this is these are the two marginal classifiers, W transpose X equal to -1 and W transpose X is equal to 1. Now, these points, the ones which are lying just on the margin, that is for which these equations are exactly satisfied. So for these points, W transpose X plus 1 is let us say, that is to say, W transpose X is less than equal to minus 1, and for these points W transpose X is greater than equal to plus 1. But for these points which are lying on the margins, for them W transpose X equal to -1, and for these points W transpose X equal to +1. Now it can be established through a lot of mathematics that that it is for these points that the lambdas will be non-zero. All the other points are, for them, lambda will be equal to 0. So for here, lambda is greater than sorry, I mean is non-zero. So for this one again, lambda is non-zero. For everything else, lambda equal to 0. Here, lambda equal to 0. Why? Because these are like the critical points. That is like the success of our algorithm depends on correctly classifying these points. These points, this one, this one, this one, which lies away from the margin, they are going to be correctly classified anyway. I do not have to worry about them. My worry is with these marginal points. So I have to, when I choose the W's, it turns out that it is really these points which dictate what my W is going to be. Correct? So these points are my support vectors. Rest are support vectors. What is meant by rest? Rest are those points for which lambda is not equal to 0. And so as you can understand, if lambda is not equal to 0, that means the W actually depends on their feature vectors. So the W actually does not depend on these points at all. That not dependency is because their lambdas are 0. But lambdas are non-zero only for these points. So the W depends only on these critical points, which is because these points are on the verge of getting misclassified. So W puts in special care in classifying these points. Right, so it's these points which we say are supporting W. That is why we call these points as the support vectors. These points do not support W. It's these points which do. So it's called support vectors. And this whole thing, this whole algorithm for classifying this thing is known as the support vector machine, or SVM. Okay, so this is the story of support vector machine.
Sir,
Now, yes.
sir, for testing, in the testing case, we got a pretty good marginal classifiers, right? So can't we just take those marginal, like white, instead of taking sign, uh, we can take whether it's greater than 1 or less than or equal to -1 with margins, with respect to margins.
See, so that's what we discussed earlier, right? So like we saw that the marginal classifiers are the ones which just about classify the points. If there is even a slight mismatch, like they can get misclassified. That is the training for the marginal classifiers are able to just about classify all the training points correctly. But some of the test points can be on this side, like we can have a cross point here or a circle point here, etc., etc. So these will not be correctly classified by the marginal classifier, right? So these things were not there in the training phase, but when I go to testing, these things can come. So I do not, in the testing phase, I do not want to risk the marginal classifier. It is precisely for that reason that I decided that I want a classifier which should have as big margin as possible. That was the whole idea, because I did not want the marginal classifiers. That is why I did not think the marginal classifiers are safe. That is why I went for the optimal classifier. That's the reason we do it. Now, as somebody had already pointed out, when we are formulating that problem, we did not take into account the possibility that there may be some outliers, right? There may be, now it may, like for example, if we have if the data set which we are doing, on which we are working, is a nearly separable data set like this one, in that case obviously it is not it will not be possible for all the data points to be correctly classified. So that means the constraints which we had come out, which we had designed in the previous problem, the constraints, what were the constraints saying? The constraints were basically saying that all the points are correctly classified, right? That constraint you could have put in case of the linearly separable data set. But in this case, as you can see, it is not even possible to satisfy all the constraints. Because why? Because there are outliers. So you will not be able to satisfy all the constraints. What's worse, you do not know which are the outliers. You, in this case, of course, you can visualize and you can understand, okay, this is the outlier. But in general, the data set which you will have will be high dimensional and it will have lots of data points. So you do not know which point is going to be the outlier, correct? So what you have to, so so it is not possible for you to say that I will write the those of the constraint equations, that is I mean the constant inequalities for all the points that are not outliers. For the outliers I will not write the equations, that I cannot do. How will I do? Because I do not know which are the outliers. Moreover, it may also happen that the point which is a outlier with respect to this line, may another point may be an outlier with respect to a different line. Right? So like so we cannot really say like that. So instead what we have to do is that we have to change the constraint inequalities in such a way that they can take the outliers into account, and they can make sure that like they say something about the outliers. So for that purpose, what we do is we introduce what is known as slack variables. So for those, so this is the original constraint that we had, right? For each of the data points, this is indicating that they are correctly classified with respect to the marginal classifier. But now what we are saying is there may be some points which it may not be possible to classify them with respect to the marginal classifier. So for such points, I will have to make some concessions because they may be the outliers. Now, again to remind you, I do not know which points are the outlier. So what I have to do? So what I do is I make these functions, I mean these inequalities, I make them a bit more flexible. I say that for all the data points, it need not be that it has to be greater than equal to 1, It's enough if it is greater than equal to 1 minus xi I. That is, for every data point, I define some variable known as xi I, and which I call as the slack variables. Now, what are these xi's? These xi's are some variables whose values will be set opportunistically as and when the need arises. So, if a point is if there is a point which is, yeah, those who have classes may leave. Okay, fine. I think I will. This will take some time. There is no point in continuing this. I think we will continue this in tomorrow's lab class. For the first hour, 2 to 3, we will I will complete this part, and then after that the TS will take over. Okay. So let's stop now, and we'll continue tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.